Welcome, everyone. It's good to see all of you. If you are able to turn your cameras on, we would love to see your faces. Already a lot of faces. Thank you so much. But we also understand you may be in a place where you can't turn your camera on, and that's fine. I want to welcome all of you. My name is Andy Engel, and I lead public programs here at Reimagine. Welcome to O Broken Heart, a Mother's Day poetry gathering for mourners. First, a little bit about Reimagine for those of you who may not know. Reimagine is a nonprofit organization catalyzing a uniquely powerful community. People of different backgrounds, people of different ages, people of different races and ethnicities, different sexual orientations, different gender identities, people of faith, people of no faith, all coming together to support each other in facing adversity, loss, and mortality. We're here to transform life's biggest challenges into action and growth. Reimagine resources, support groups, gatherings like this one today are sliding scale and accessible. This is made possible by the support and generosity of participants like you. So for those of you who already made a tax-deductible donation to Reimagine when you registered, thank you so much. Your gift will immediately support Reimagine's mission to help people of all walks of life transform the hard parts into purpose and meaning. Our theme in May is mother loss. Both Reimagine and its collaborators are presenting events and experiences for those grieving the deaths of their mothers and their mother figures. I'm guessing many of you are here in anticipation of the holiday that's coming up on Sunday. Memories can be joyful, they can be painful, and the loss is expansive. Your mother might be living, but that relationship is estranged or broken. You might be the primary caregiver for a mother or an elder with dementia. You might be a bereaved parent or someone who has experienced infertility or miscarriage. We see you. I want to let you know that alongside this gathering, Reimagine collaborators are hosting their own events this month, including experiences related to mother loss. We have an event happening on Sunday with Sasha Soref, who's leading a movement-based experience. And on May 16th, Erin Elder is sharing Bloom Path, which is a tool that was birthed after the loss of her daughter, Evelyn. You can register for these events on the website, letsreimagine.org. My colleague Amanda Nagai is helping out tonight. She's pasting a link in the chat. Amanda is our chief of staff, and I like to call her our chief poetry officer as well. If you need some help during this gathering, you can send a private message to either me or Amanda. We can try to help. Now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jenna Kirkpatrick, who's going to say a few words about Evermore, a Reimagine collaborator and co-host of this gathering. Jenna is a writer, she's a community organizer, she's a grief advocate, and she's an activist. She manages outreach and engagement at Evermore, and she's the mother of Ellis, who was killed in 2011. Jenna.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us here tonight. Yes, as Andy said, I'm Jenna Kirkpatrick, and I manage outreach and engagement for Evermore. We're so happy to be here tonight. Evermore is a national nonprofit. We're based out of Washington, D.C. Our mission is to make the world a more livable place for bereaved people. We are changing policies and practices within our communities and across our nation so that all bereaved people can achieve a healthy, prosperous, and equitable future. You can visit us at evermore.org to learn more about our work and how you can get involved. As Andy mentioned, I am a bereaved mom. My beloved son, Ellis, died 14 years ago. He was killed by a drunk driver. For me, Mother's Day is a time to remember my beautiful children, Ellis, who would be 33 years old, and Lila, who is 28 years old. They are the reason for my greatest pride, and the very best moments of my life were spent raising them. I'm so grateful to be here with you all today and look forward to us holding each other in these tender spaces. My work with Evermore, with our incredible poet laureate, Rosemerry, with James, with Reimagine, and each one of you, it offers such hope and joy to my broken open heart. So thank you so much for sharing this space with me.
Thank you, Jenna. Now I'd like to briefly introduce our guides for tonight, James Cruz and Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer. But please read their full bios in the original event listing and check out their links, which we'll paste in the chat. James Cruz is a poet, an editor, and an educator. His anthologies have included a number of poets who have appeared on the Reimagine virtual stage. His recent publications include A Box Full of Poetry and Love is for All of Us, poems of tenderness and belonging from the LGBTQ+ community and friends. He co-edited that one with his husband, Brad Peacock. They live in Vermont. Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer is a poet, a teacher, a speaker, and facilitator who co-hosts the Emerging Form podcast on the creative process. She has a daily audio series on the Ritual app called The Poetic Path. Her most recent poetry collections include All the Honey and The Unfolding. In January 2024, she became the inaugural Poet Laureate for Evermore. She lives in Western Colorado with her husband and daughter. So James and Rosemerry, at many of our events, I usually ask our guest speakers who they are honoring at this gathering, who they're mourning. Is there someone you want to dedicate this experience to? And I'd welcome all of you in the chat. Please start using it. That question is for you as well. So thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone who's here. And yes, please do put the names of whoever it is that you're dedicating your time together here. Please put their name in the chat bar. And maybe even say not only the name of your beloved, but say the names of someone else's beloved too. And as we do this, and as I'll say soon the name of my beloved, and so will James, I'm just going to light this candle and say these words that my sweet friend Wendy said to me when my son died. She said, "He has given you his love light to carry." Your beloved has given you their love light to carry. So I'll just light this light and I'll say, Finn, and please do say your own beloved's name out loud.
And I'll just say, my mother, Cindy, I dedicate this gathering to her, as well as to both of my grandmothers who were like mothers to me and also died in the same year. So Freddie and Marianne.
Freddie, Marianne, Cindy, Finn. And I think to begin, friends, maybe let's begin in silence. Just by closing your eyes and we'll all arrive together. And maybe James, do you want to lead us in a little meditation, and then I'll bring us in with a song.
Yeah, so just close your eyes or turn your gaze downward, whatever feels most comfortable for you. And just pay slight attention to your breath, watching it enter and leave the body just little by little, giving attention to the breath, feeling the solidity of the chair or whatever you're sitting on beneath you, feeling the floor beneath your feet and the earth beneath that holds us all. And just noticing that we are all breathing together here. Taking air in and out of our bodies. Just noticing any places where there's pain, where there's an ache, and being with that, just letting that be. And just breathe together for another moment or two. We'll take one more big, deep breath in and out together. And just come back slowly, letting the eyes open slowly. Now we're here.
Not to make loss beautiful, but to make loss the place where beauty starts, where the heart understands for the first time the nature of its journey. Not to make loss beautiful, but to make loss the place where beauty starts, where the heart understands for the first time the nature of its journey. Those are the words of Gregory Orr. Those are words that saved me after the death of my son Finn 3.5 years ago, that I could turn to again and again, knowing that the loss itself was never beautiful, but that the love that I had for him was ever growing, changing, informing me, and that became a path of beauty. And other aspects of the grieving process too, which definitely surprised me. I didn't know that that was possible. So in this time together, I want to thank Evermore. I want to thank Reimagine. I want to thank you for coming. It's a courageous thing to show up. And this is a little bit of what it's going to look like for our time together. James and I will have a conversation and read some poems about losing a child, losing a parent, losing a mother, a grandmother, and then we'll converse a little bit about how writing can be helpful sometimes in showing up to meet this grief. And we'll offer a couple of invitations for you to do your own writing. Because the group is so large, we won't be doing sharing out loud, but we will allow for sharing in the chat bar. And that's kind of the course of our night. Hey, James.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming today too. And thanks to Evermore and Reimagine for inviting me to this event. I am on the road right now for my new book, but I just couldn't say no to being here with Rosemerry today. And so it feels like such a deep gratitude to be here. And, I was struck as we were all coming on today that, it felt like there was a lot of joy in the Zoom room as we were coming on together. And that has been so true of my journey, in part thanks to Rosemerry and the example of her grief journey, and through her poetry and learning about her loss of Finn, that joy and beauty, as she said in Gregory Orr's song, are both possible in the midst of grief. And it doesn't mean that grief is a joyful thing at all, but that we can find surprising moments within it and hold on to those and be nourished by the deep feelings of the grief, as well as the other things that come entwined with it. And so I just want to honor that piece of things too, that it is such a mystery how it all comes braided and intertwined.
Yeah. Maybe I'll share a poem about that, about how kind of the astonishment of what happens after we meet the loss of a parent or a child. Well, anyone really, but I think these primary relationships, and I want to thank you, Andy, for honoring that they're complex, right? Even if we loved them enormously, certainly they were complicated And there were things about them that were difficult, and how do we honor all of that? So this is a poem called Still Here. After I did not die the first minute, I lived the next minute. More truly, life lived me. More truly, the thick air, infused with lake scent and rosemary and late summer, insisted I breathe. More that the sun did not let me not see the beloveds still here. The thick green leaves of August reminded me life pushes through. There was not a half second I forgot the horror. And still, I did not die. After I lived the first day, I lived the next, opened the door and drove the car and held close the people I love. Rain fell and a rainbow bloomed, and the night was sleepless and long and longer. I lived the next week, the next, the next. I lived the next year and the next. More truly, the same life that lives through mushroom, tulip, magpie, worm, eagle, gnat, the same life keeps living me. The horror no less real. And love continues to sprout like new trees after fire, slow and indisputable, all gift. What seemed gone is still here. The way light and dark and air are still here. Another day, another year. Somehow we go on, don't we? Life goes on, and it seems impossible. I think I know that everyone who's here knows what it's like, this moment of how do I go on? And we do, and here we are together.
Mhm. Yeah, just that image of you driving the car and just going about the errands and the daily life in spite of all the sleepless nights that I'm sure we all know so well. And that, constant sort of emergency feeling. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but when you're in fresh grief, I think there's this persistence of a feeling of emergency, like you're always on edge and you're always waiting for some other shoe to drop because this one essential shoe has dropped in your life. And the almost, the beauty and the obscenity of the thick green August leaves, the life still pushing through, the most, abundant, warm month in many places, and the persistence of that in the face of the horror that you didn't forget for a single minute. But it's almost like paying attention to all of it, holding all of it. And I think that is what I was talking about earlier, just this idea that, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And some days it's not even doable, so it's like aspirational, I think, to hold the whole spectrum of what we're feeling. But those days when we can hold it all feel like such rewards, and they feel like a way of honoring all the people and all the names that are listed here in the chat and that you and I have shared here. I was thinking about what to share first. This poem came to me as one of the first poems that felt like it just even barely touched the surface of my grief. And I had about a week with my mother. I didn't actually know she was dying. She died pretty suddenly, but she was in the hospital. And so I was seeing her every day. And, there was so much touch, even though her mind was beginning to go a bit and she wasn't always quite there. There was always the touch, the touching of hands, and the small things that I could do for her, cutting up her food or, smoothing back her hair. And so this poem comes to me, and I've led a few workshops, using poems like this. And I'm always struck by how essential the final moments are, or the final days, or just the last touch, even if we don't know that our beloved is leaving us. And so this one is called Touch. We are changed by the smallest gestures of touch, as when, in my mother's final days, I smoothed the loose gray hairs back from her face, while she shivered all over, smiling with pleasure. Like a bolt of lightning shooting through me, she said, the threads of her mind already beginning to unravel, although I think we both knew she was talking about love. And I want to share another as well. Just these are two pretty short pieces. And this one, again, kind of going back to that idea that we're walking around with this pain sometimes years later, and no one knows about it often. Strangers don't know about it. Maybe even coworkers or professional colleagues don't know about it. And yet that idea that life is still going on, and yet we are craving that acknowledgement somehow of our pain without our having to use up the energy of repeating the story again. I know that probably resonates for you, Rosemary, and many of you out there, because to tell the story again asks something deeper. It asks for a use of energy that we may not have. So if only there were some way that people could know as soon as we met them, like, oh, this is what's happening. This is what they're going through. And so this little poem is called Made Visible. Some days I wish our pain was visible, that our grief gave off a slight glimmer from the center of the chest, so that as we walked down the street, shifting a bag of olive oil and bread from one hand to the other, every passerby might see a glow lifting off of us like moonlight on the surface of broken water, and know to soften their eyes and whisper, hello.
Yeah, it can be so invisible. I think of this all the time. Actually, I remember right after Finn died, I remember what it took to walk into the grocery store and to be terrified I would run into somebody because I didn't want to have to explain anything, and fall apart next to the broccoli. Although I did, I did
Yeah,
do that.
right. Right.
And also just walking into the grocery store, gosh, and when you see the food of the person that you loved, and I remember, just bawling in front of the saltine crackers because I wasn't going to buy them.
Right.
And this, yes, then the longing, I think, like your poem says, to have some way that for people to know there's a tenderness here that can you meet this, can you meet me, can you meet me
Mhm.
with tenderness, which has actually made me want to treat everyone every time, all the time, just knowing what we don't know, knowing how it doesn't show on someone's face, that there isn't a way for us to tell who's grieving, who lost their mother yesterday, who lost their child last week. We don't know. And so how do we bring this kind of generosity to everyone, knowing that it could be that they could be that tender?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of your poem, Watching My Friend Pretend Her Heart Isn't Breaking, that we never know what someone else has swallowed, what they're holding so deeply within themselves. And so to treat everyone we can with that great tenderness, including ourselves. Sometimes we're not always aware of the heaviness of what we're carrying.
Oh my goodness, isn't that true? I mean, and then in those moments, I call those the ambush, right? When you're out and you're just doing whatever you're doing, and then all of a sudden it just comes up, and now you're sobbing, and and you're in the hardware store, or you're washing dishes, or you're out walking and on the sidewalk, and then all of a sudden you're weeping, and because we are that fragile and we aren't always in touch with, oh, it's right here,
That's right.
and so then that ambush comes, yeah.
Yeah, for me, that moment was being in the grocery store soon after my mother died and seeing a bag of pirate's booty, the like cheesy things, whatever they are. They're not good for you, that's for sure. But my mother and I would always share them, and I just saw that, and it was a similar ambush moment. But I'm also struck by how we have this universal fear of falling apart, or we say losing it, which is such interesting language, right, for describing a falling into the deep feeling and honoring that is grief, or losing it, like we're losing some essential thread of how to be, when I think actually when we can give into that ache in the chest that we're ambushed by, that we're gaining something, we're not falling apart so much as falling into ourselves and the truth of our experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what's happened for me is that I've just had to get comfortable with crying, period, in front of other people, or just out in the open, and people do tend to, I mean, in my town anyway, people understood. I mean, I live in a very small town. There was nobody who was surprised I was crying. And I finally realized, okay, that is what it is. I'm not going to pretend I'm okay when I'm really not. And I was lucky to be in circumstances where people could accept that. I thought I'd share a poem then about this kindness then to ourselves. How do we treat ourselves with kindness, compassion? I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've had in losing Finn and my father, actually, in that same month, was just how important it was I was grateful for all the love I was receiving from other people, grateful even for the love that I felt like was rising up that wasn't even attached to other people. It was just love itself somehow. It seemed to be coming in. But I became very aware of how important self-compassion was in the way that I spoke to myself, how gentle I could be, and how much easier life was when I was gentle. Like, instead of, oh, why are you crying in public again? Oh, sweetheart, of course you're crying. Because it's sad. Because it's sad. This is a fairly recent poem, and I thought, what if I could go back in time and send a love letter to myself just before everything, just before he died? And what if I could send myself love, not just now, not have just self-compassion for right now, but self-compassion for myself back then too? So this is a poem called Love Letter Sent Back in Time to Myself 3 years ago. Your worst fears will happen soon. And you will crumple, will wail, will not know how to say hello, will somehow remember how to stand, how to open a door, how to sit in a chair and listen to the swallows, the relentlessly sweet chickadees. You will have no words, but you will have your attention, your willingness, your stubbornness, your devotion to life. Your heart, though wrecked, will not be erased. It will beat on, will be on. And though I do not understand how this happens, you live, you not only live, you're remade, just as rivers are remade by rain, just as wind is refashioned by the cool of the night, just as bones become stronger after the break, just as a story resists the end. Just as the notes of a song can be reused to compose a new song. Oh, sweetheart, you will not only sing the new song, a song equal parts haunting and beautiful, you will be the new song and the silence that holds it.
Mm.
I think
Mm.
it's a beautiful practice to write ourselves love letters. A love letter right now, a love letter to yourself in the past, a love letter to yourself right after everything fell apart, just to notice the language then that we use and extend that compassion and that love to ourselves in our most difficult moments. I actually have this little fantasy that some of that love that I felt back then was from future me, sending it
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I have no scientific backup for this, but I do believe that retroactive kindness and self-compassion are absolutely possible, that we can look back and see those, just fragile, struggling selves, fragile, resilient, strong, struggling selves, and give them self-compassion and give them just everything that they needed and maybe didn't have at the time too. So
Yes.
I would have no doubt that you are feeling that love. Oh.
I just want to say, friends, that I see in the chat bar a few comments about what are the names of the poems, and I think James and I could send them to
Mhm.
Andy, and that the poems, you could actually receive copies of the poems that we share tonight. They can come with you with the recording into your inbox when that's sent. Is that all right, Andy? I can see you. Yes. Okay, good. So all the poems will come to you.
Yeah, no worries about catching the names or where you can find them or anything like that. We'll follow up. Well, I love that idea of being the song and being the silence that holds it. So I'll share this next poem and then maybe we can all do a little writing exercise together as well. It'll just be for about 10 minutes, totally optional, low pressure, of course. No one's calling on you. Um, and this poem came during that period of fresh grief when delight and joy seemed so rare. And and yet there were all these moments, these little openings, and especially from the natural world, when I felt like I was being called back to the world, back to my attention for the world, as your poem said, Rosemary. And so my husband is a farmer. He has a tractor, and I don't know if you have them elsewhere in the country, but winter wrens, these tiny little birds, are just the most amazing little beings, and they will build a nest almost anywhere. They bubble over with song. So I encourage you to go online if you're a bird person and just listen to the song, because it's like, how can a song that big come from such a small body? I mean, really, truly. Um, and they're all around our house. And so, they decided to nest in the arm of my husband's tractor, which, he's like reshaping the land around our house and loves gardening and all this. So he could not drive his tractor for weeks until the little babies fledged from the nest. And so we were able to watch them go from the eggs to the babies to finally the mother teaching the young how to fly and leave the nest. So I don't even know how I had time for all this, but somehow I made time because this seemed really important and perhaps very healing for me at the time. So this is so much space for song. What made the winter wren say, "This is my home now," as it carried stick after stick and tufts of grass to the tractor, shaping a soft place inside the arm that lifts the bucket? What gave such a small body so much space for song, belting out notes from its perch on top of the seat, chirping if we get too close to that hollow where her young are now hatching, calling out in hunger? What fills any of us with care enough to say yes to this difficult world, taking our places in it despite the risks, knowing the dangers? Watch how the wren shrinks itself to fit inside the tractor we haven't driven in weeks, where tiny beings have just emerged from eggs the size of marbles, each one filled with the songs of their mother and father, a music that's larger than this one life we are given. So I think what I'll invite you to do, and if Rosemary, if you have anything to add to this as well, I'll just invite you to take the next 10 minutes and maybe write about a moment you had perhaps engaged with the natural world or engaged with some people that you really love and appreciate in your life, where you felt this sense of largeness, that there was still something larger than you. Whether we call it love, whether we call it soul or spirit, we don't even have to give it a name. But when you felt this little opening to a larger sense of the world still going on around you, and the possibility of delight and joy visiting you again as life kept going on. So we'll write for another 10 minutes, and I'll put a little invitation in the chat here as well. All right, everyone. So let's go ahead and come back together. Maybe take another deep breath, all of us together at once. And if you did choose to write and you are able to share, or if you just want to share about the experience, you're welcome to do so in the chat. So feel free to do that. We're actually not going to be able to hear from folks individually because we have such a large group, and we're running on a little bit of limited time here. So just feel free to share your experience in the chat, and then Rosemary is going to lead us in another little writing exercise together as well.
Yeah. Before I do, let's just have a little conversation, James, maybe about what do you notice? What do you notice about your own writing process and how that has helped you meet grief?
Well, I know that I was very grateful that I had a writing practice to fall back on when I was, especially in the fresh grief period. I would say also it was a little disconcerting because I am a professional writer. This is what I do for a living. And yet the poems that I was writing, the essays, even in my journaling, it felt very fragmented. It was very hard to focus and stay focused on one single thing, and to feel that the poems or pieces that I wrote were really going to the same depth that I, kind of hold myself to whenever I'm writing. And I think it was because I just simply wasn't ready. I wasn't able to go any deeper than the surface level. And so, those I've gone back and read those early poems, and it could be easy to say that they don't have much value, but they were essential to me, and they were essential to my healing, and they led me to the healing poems that came afterward that I think are more ready to be shared with the world. And I have a book of poems on grief coming out this fall. So there is an output from that, but I think I had to just stay with this exercise that was just for myself, that it wasn't for anybody else, and knowing I needed to know that I wasn't going to share this with the world, that this was just for me. And that was important for me. So I think everyone is different, just to find what works for each of us individually. But just the journaling, just the daily checking in was really, really useful for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I didn't write at all, and after a really long period of time, after, how many years of writing a poem a day, and then after Finn died, I did not write for 7 weeks. And I remember though having this thought of, when the writing did return, how grateful I was for the chance. I just felt like it was again and again a chance to connect again with him.
Yes.
And actually, I became very aware that there were two kinds of poems that emerged. One were poems about him, and the other were poems about grief. And I became very aware that these were two different relationships, and that we do have an intimate relationship after a great loss with grief. And so it was tending to really, in some ways, tending to two different relationships. And to this day, I noticed that this is still true, that there are both of these kinds of poems. But I remember also thinking that writing doesn't fix anything, right? It doesn't make it better. But that wasn't the point. It was, I think what it did allow me to do was to show up, to want to show up, and to want to show up with curiosity, right? Not just to maybe journal about, this is what happened today, but also just this wonder of what is here, what is inside me, what's happening in here right now, and just continuously shine this kind of light of curiosity on it, which I think helps it to breathe. I think this is what it is. This is my theory about it, is that it gives it air.
Yeah.
To be curious about it, and then to notice just how much it changed every day. And because I was writing every day, this helped me too. And I know I've said this before in almost every grief writing class I've done, but the practice that I had to begin with was, I would begin with, today grief is. And I would just wonder, what is it today? And I would fill it in usually with a word, just any word that I wouldn't know, right? I wouldn't have a preconceived idea about it, but I'm just looking behind you. Today, grief is a staircase.
Yeah.
And how is that true? And I'd just sit down and I'd wonder, how is that true? How is that true? What does that have to teach me? And so inviting this kind of wonder through metaphor was so profound. It taught me so much. I ended up writing poems about chairs and erasers and teacups, and just things that, in this way, I felt like the world became my teacher for how to meet grief.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really helpful, Rosemary. And for myself and other people, that this idea that there are two relationships when you're in grief, whether you're writing about them or not, I think you're tending to the relationship with grief itself, this thing that's now a part of you and a part of your life forever. And then the relationship with the other person that is ongoing and also evolving and changing over time. I think probably everyone here could attest to that as well. And so, and the relationship with grief is ever evolving and changing. So how to hold these two very new, very essential relationships in our life? I mean, I think we all need some kinds of practice to really explore those. And I think writing is ideal because we all have, if we can speak and if we can write, we have language, we have the capacity to have a conversation with the person, the beloved that we've lost, as well as our own grief. And, one of my poems is follow your grief. I think it will never lead you wrong if you just follow where your grief is leading you. And that was my practice also in the writing, but just in the grieving of the loss of my mother and grandmothers during that time. Just where is grief taking me today? I mean, it's a version of what you were saying.
Right. So then in that writing prompt that you just gave us, that invitation to notice what is larger than us, right? And how do we hold ourselves in a soft way? These are ways to tend to our grief, right? This is ways to tend to our relationship to grief. And I want to say too, friends, if you felt like, oh, I sat down to write and nothing happened, that's right. Sometimes nothing happens. And profoundly for me, just noticing that I can sit there, and I tend to be very patient about these things. I give myself a very long window to, I might just sit there and wait for an hour. Like, I don't mind the waiting. I don't mind sitting with that blank page. In fact, I love being with that blank page and just that sense of anything could happen. And I don't mind sitting with it for a very long time. But I understand it can be disconcerting. And there can be the sense of, oh, why aren't I writing? I'm supposed to be writing. This was my time to be writing. If you don't write, friends, this is okay. So much of writing is not writing. So just giving yourself total permission to show up with a blank page in any way that it happens. So I think because you did the one about that's kind of helping us meet grief, I'll read a poem and offer an invitation that invites us to explore our relationship now with the person who's gone. And again, this is another newer poem, and it's a letter to my son. Oh, so this is the second letter poem that I've shared. Letters are easy poems to write in a way. In fact, we have in poetry a fancy name for it. We call them epistles. But in a way, I think for me, it's an easy way to get into a poem because it's familiar, right? We all know how to write a letter. And so this is one to my son, letter to my son over 3 years since he's gone. You would be jealous, I think, of how your sister is learning trig, speaking Spanish, playing bridge. You'd probably tease her, but really what you'd be thinking is, she is so cool. And she is, sweetheart. She's fun and silly, like you, only like her. We talk about you, of course. Just this weekend, we remembered how once you said, if a 99-pound person ate a 1-pound burger, they would be 1% burger. I wonder what percentage of your sister is grief and what percentage love. Tonight, a girl asked her if she had any siblings. She said, yes, a brother. When the girl asked her how old you were, she told her the truth, that you were 17 when you died. What a terrible gift to learn how to say the hardest things straight. I can't help but think if you are watching her, you too must be in awe of who she is becoming. Oh, how we learn to grow from whatever soil we have been given. I do not pretend to know how this works. I only know she is learning to transform ache into beauty, nightmare into dream. I only know I long for her to know love from you, the way a garden feels loved by sun, by rain. I do think that the fact that I've written so many poems to my son that are letters has helped me. And by the way, not just in letters, but I talk to him constantly. I go out and talk to him while I'm walking the trash up to the road, and I talk to him while I'm gardening. I talk to him a lot. But I do think that this practice of talking to him and writing him letters has allowed for a connection with him to feel as if it's still vital, still growing, still here, still very, very present. And so the invitation I'm going to offer us, and I'll put it in the chat bar right now, is to write a letter to the person who is gone and to tell them, what is life like now? What do you most want to tell them about the people and the places still here? What questions do you want to ask them? And we'll take 10 minutes. Just see what happens, and I'll give you a little warning and then let you know when to come back. And as always, if if the invitation isn't working for you, then do whatever does. Just write into whatever is lit up for you right now. So we'll come back approximately at 11 after the hour. and welcome back. Welcome back, friends. Once again, I'll invite you to share in the chat bar perhaps something that you wrote, maybe all of what you wrote, or maybe just a line or two, or maybe share something about your process, what you noticed about yourself as you were writing. I had a chance during this last break to read some of the things that people had shared from the first writing, and my goodness, how beautiful. Thank you for your authenticity and your vulnerability. It is no small thing to turn up to a page and meet what's here. In fact, I think it's exceptionally brave. I think, as all of us know, when you don't know what's going to happen, when you sit down with a blank and anything could happen, it can be terrifying. That things can sometimes come up that frighten us, and it takes so much courage. So I just honor the courage that every single one of you brought to a blank page and to showing up here together. Oh, interesting. Beth says in the chat bar, I noticed my questions to Stephen seem so irrelevant now. The why seems pointless to keep worrying about. Isn't that interesting? That seems to point almost, James, to what you were saying about this ability to maybe for perspective, right? And how poetry, writing in general, can be such a invitation into a larger perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's, the questions that mattered the most to us won't matter as time goes on. There will be new questions, different questions, not better or worse, but perhaps more mysterious as we grow and change with our grief. And I think, more than anything, as difficult as it is to hold our grief, that's the goal, is to keep changing and growing along with it, and holding open the fact that we don't know what our grief will bring us. It's not like, oh, this is a silver lining or something, but it will open up a new life. It will reshape us, as you were saying in one of your poems today.
Yeah. Is there another poem you want to share with us, James?
Sure, there are so many poems I want to share with you all today.
I
I know
knew that.
Rosemary and I both have so many riches of poems that we want to share. Gosh, I think I'll share this one. This came up actually in a retreat that Rosemary and I were leading last week. It was just last week that we were together in person. And this comes from the concept of kintsugi, which is the Japanese practice of mending broken pottery with gold. And I had written about this before myself, but I was struck by the fact that so often our culture rushes to fix things, and it felt like people were really latching on to this kintsugi idea, like, oh, we can just fill in all the cracks with gold and make them beautiful and stronger. And it's like, actually, and I think Rosemary was the one who pointed this out to me, that the vessels are often kept broken so that we can honor the brokenness of them before repairing them and seeing them as more beautiful, and seeing the flaws themselves, so-called flaws, as more beautiful. So this poem is called Kintsugi Again. In the Japanese art of mending ceramics with powdered gold, no one ever talks about how they leave the pots, cups, and cracked bowls broken for a while, sometimes whole generations. And so I say to you, let your heart stay shattered in your chest. Let it ache. Some may claim you've now been broken open and can let in the light. That might be true, but before you rush to gloss over the wounds, filling the holes with gold so they glimmer, try to find beauty in the broken places too, proof of where the fire left its marks on you.
Right, not rushing to repair. Noticing how the last line, how it's left its mark on you. I mean, every one of us so marked by grief, whether it was a beloved or somebody who we really struggled with. I think that whether we're grieving the love that we lost or the love we're never going to have, um, these are profound, profound griefs that change us forever.
Yeah. And the last line, as my lines often come to me, was a total surprise. This idea of the fire leaving its marks on you, and that we all have to walk through those fires. And it's this metaphor too of the lodgepole pines that actually need fire to open the seeds inside of them. And we would never invite the fire. We'd never really welcome the fire. But it's here, it's here in our lives, and it visits each of us in its own way. And so to just let those seeds be opened, and to stay with the brokenness. I'm sure there's a period when those lodgepole pines release their seeds where nothing is happening. It seems like the landscape is completely lifeless, and yet life is still stirring within.
In fact, needs that disaster to stir again. Yeah. Well, that's a difficult and beautiful metaphor.
Yeah.
I think I'll share one more poem, friends. I'm going to align it with yours, but I'm just going to let you know what's going to happen next. After I share a poem, we're going to have an opportunity for you to think about what you're taking away. So I'm just going to let you think about that, just noticing as I'm reading, thinking about what we're taking away from our time together. The poem I thought I'd share was inspired by the one that you just shared, James, in which, like that kintsugi and in that willingness to stay with what is broken. I think one of the things that's been shocking for me is not rushing to make myself feel better, not thinking I'm supposed to be better now, or not, just really letting myself be sad, be broken, and not and that's what it is. Hello, broken self. Hello, sadness. Just really letting myself stay with that. So this poem is called Choosing the Sorrow. In my heart today, a river of love for you. Sparkling, clear, easy to wade in. Some may not understand why I reach down to pick up a smooth stone of sorrow. Not because I've stumbled on it, but because I want to know its weight again. I search beneath the glossy currents, and always I find what I seek. There are thousands of such stones, enough to cover the whole riverbed, every one of them precious. Every stone a memory of how it was to love you when you were alive. Stone of you waking in your crib, pointing to light. Stone of you doing tricks on your bike. Stone of hiking up cliffs. Stone of dishes undone. Stone of your eyes. Stone of long fingers. Stone of you whistling across the room. The river of love is no less powerful for all this sorrow. When I am still, often I choose to go waiting here. I notice how beautiful they are, all these stones, worn as they are by the currents of love. I notice how the current never stops. It's so amazing to me how to think of the memories of our beloveds like stones. These just this like you could make it's a list poem really, I suppose, a list poem of some, at least partly it's a list poem of all these little memories that I pick up, and I'm sure you all know what this is like too. You pick up that memory and you look at it again and again, and you remember some of those memories so beautiful and some of those memories so difficult, and you pick them up and you look at them and you remember, yes, and you put it back into that river of love. and go there on purpose. I mean, who would have thought that we would go, that we would meet our sorrow, we would meet something that hurts on purpose?
Mm.
And yet the joy of knowing, oh yes, this is what it was to love you. This is what it was to know you. This is how my life still is informed by you and who you are. And what a gift that is each time we step into that river.
Mm. And I think it can be useful to know that we are held by that constant current of love when we step into the river, because the river can feel very overwhelming. It's like, oh, I'm going to be carried away by this grief. This might be too much. The current is supposed to be here. The current is holding me, just to keep that in mind. And that idea, I love, you often read these poems from your book, which I've read numerous times now. And I'm like, I didn't remember that one. Wait a minute. So, books bear many readings, and I think it's striking me because of that image of the stones in the riverbed and that idea of bedrock, that there is this foundation and that those stones need to be there and that we need to wade in this river. It's the only way. Wading in the river is the only way to stay in touch with these moments and these memories that we still have of our beloved. And yet it's so difficult. And to choose it consciously, I mean, people would think you're crazy. Why would you embrace grief? Why would you willingly go into this river? And yet, those of us who have lost beloveds, this is the way. This is how we remember and honor them. And I think it changes the tenor of things when we choose, because we can say to ourselves, no, I'm choosing to step into this river today. I'm choosing to be with this. And it does often happen, as you say in the poem, when we are still in moments of stillness. When I was in fresh grief for my mother's loss, I would be afraid sometimes when my husband would leave the house and go visit friends or something. And I was left behind because I knew I would be meeting my grief. And yet I still chose to do it. I had to.
Yes. I mean, there's that sense that, and you brought it back, even that urgency. There's an urgency that, okay, this is my chance right now to meet this. Yeah, thank you for saying it just like that. Friends, we're coming to a close, and so I'm going to invite you now to put in the chat bar anything you're taking away from our time together. And it could be a line from a poem, it could be an experience that you had, or something someone said. But please share them. Share them in the chat bar. And as that's happening, I'm also going to, before I turn it over to Andy for the very end, invite you to sing along with me. And I know not everybody loves singing, but if you don't want to sing, you don't have to. No one's going to hear you. Or maybe just speak the words along. But I think we'll close with that same song that I began with, that Gregory Orr poem. And I'll sing a phrase, and then I'll invite you just to sing it back. No one's going to hear you. Please do not unmute. That creates chaos in Zoom. But we'll sing this call and response-ishly together. Not to make loss beautiful, but to make loss the place where beauty starts, where the heart understands for the first time the nature of its journey. Not to make loss beautiful, but to make loss the place where beauty starts, where the heart understands for the first time the nature of its journey. Hey, thanks, James.
Thank you, Rosemary. And thanks to all of you out there for being here with us and showing up with your whole and open hearts. It comes through even in Zoom. So we are very grateful to have been with you.
It is. I think it's an astonishing communion we come to discover. Even when we're very alone in our grief, we are not alone. we're alone. We're together with all the other people who feel alone. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks again to Evermore and to Reimagine. And we're going to turn it back over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, James. Can we show some love for these two guides tonight? You helped us to find the place where the beauty starts. Thank you. I also want to thank again Jenna Kirkpatrick from Evermore, my colleague Amanda Nagai from Reimagine, all of you, all the beautiful poetry that you shared in the chat. I wish we could create an anthology from it. We want to offer you now a first look before we go at this wonderful project that we're developing at Reimagine. It is a safe and inspiring digital space, a social space, to transform loss and adversity into meaning and growth. We want you to give it a test drive. It's in a beta version. It's built with care, and it's a place where you can continue your Reimagine experience. And what's great about this platform is that it emphasizes social journaling. A lot of what you were doing this evening through writing, this allows you to express feelings, to track moods, and to connect with others. You can share your own journey through guided prompts, and that journey might include dreams. It could include poetry. It could include small, sweet steps towards growth and transformation, and you can hold space for the stories of others as well. If you're interested in being one of the first users of our new platform, please let us know in the exit survey that my colleague Amanda has just pasted in the chat. This survey is really important because it is going to give us an opportunity to hear from you, to learn about what worked well, what could be improved, and what your interests are. So please start filling this out if you can while this is all fresh in your mind. And once again, thanks to all of you who showed up today and to those of you who made a donation. Thank you again. And everyone, please, please, please take care on Sunday, okay? Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you again, Rosemary and James. Thank you, everyone.